Hello there, and welcome to another of Andre's Artist Profiles. Now, being Booker T. Jones' birthday today, and being that his solo career is going so strong right now, I decided that because his name was the headliner, I just not only profile the CDs I have from Booker T. Jones himself, but also his work with Booker T. and the MGs, because, after all, it is Booker T. and the MGs, so, I wanted to profile what I had from them, and along with Booker T stuff. So anyway, let's start out. I actually was at a place in a town called Camden, Maine, called Wild Rufus, which is closed now. And I found this album there. I love the red insert it came with. Green Onions. You can see the green, they look like scallion onions on the cover. This particular album, most people know Green Onions very well. It's been used in a lot of TV shows and soundtracks, and I'm sure it's, a ringtone favorite. This is a classic Memphis soul instrumental album. It actually laid the groundwork for everything that was happening in Memphis soul afterward. And the interesting part is Steve Cropper, who, of course, all these guys in this band became huge session musicians later. And Donald Duck Dunn, the late Donald Duck Dunn, and Steve Cropper were, of course, in the Blues Brothers movie. But anyway, Steve Cropper came from a band called the Marquis, who had a strong horn section, and this still has a strong Marquis feel, but it is basically a very strong rhythm section. This original album came out in 1962 on Stax, but if you know anything about Stax history, Atlantic bought out the first, 7 or 8 years of their catalog in 1967, controversially, so it's released on Atlantic now. The next album I have by them, which is credited to Stax, you'll see on the top, is a soundtrack for a movie called Uptight. And this is a really wonderful cinematic soundtrack. Not that far removed from what Isaac Hayes did on Hot Buttered Soul, really. But Booker T and the MGs were doing it first. And this is a short album from June 1968, but it's full of treasures. And this album, of course, has a huge hit on it called Time is Tight. One of the funkiest things that came out of Memphis in 1968. And there was a whole lot of funky things coming out of Memphis in 1968. But let's move on here. Thank You, Wounded Bird label again. Universal Language, Booker T and the MGs, 1976. This album, as the writer Ricky Vincent would call it, full-on United Funk. Earth, Wind and Fire, Ohio Players, all that stuff. It's Booker T in that era. They still have that sound, they still have that organ, they still have that precision, but this is their United Funk album. And they helped create funk. There's Booker T and the MGs during that era. Fairly close to the Blues Brothers, actually, if you know the truth of it. I love that kind of kaleidoscopic CD artwork. 1977, actually, sorry, not 76. But it has that 1976 funk fans sound to it. For all you people who know a lot about funk, 1975 and 6 had a very specific sound to it, before the disco era. Okay, this next album is the first Booker T solo album I got, and it's called Potato Hole. I knew nothing about it when it came out on the Anti-label in 2009. I love the cover. This album has some good songs on it, but there's a couple songs featuring Neil Young on it that, I'm going to say it, they're flat out punk, grunge, rock. And I didn't care for those cuts at all, the way they were produced. I mean, on the back of George Clinton's One Nation Under a Groove, they say, there's nothing harder to stop than an idea whose time has already come to pass. And that is grunge. There wasn't even really a grunge. They just gave it that name. It was just modern day punk rock, indie punk. And to be honest with you, I never cared for that sound, caused a lot of trouble in my personal life, and I did not want to hear Booker T. Jones doing it. Okay, so that deducts a lot of points from this album, but I still have it because there are some cuts I like on it. This one, The Road from Memphis, came out in 2011 and is much, 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 much better. He sticks to a modern day Stax soul. A lot of retro soul now, Raphael Sadiq, they're using the Stax basis of soul to recreate their music rather than Motown. A lot of retro soul in the 90s was based on the slicker Motown sound. And, he was the one who started all of that. So he's just kind of going back to square one here, using modern production to create that sound that he was so famous for. And this is a great album. Highly recommend it. Got it on discount at Borders Books and Music, the late Borders Books and Music, before it closed down. And his newest album is more of the same, although maybe even a little bit earthier, Sound the Alarm. This just came out this year. Now, it features a lot of people like Estelle and Luke James and Guy Clark, you know. A lot of people say, oh, why do you have to feature so many guests, especially from hip-hop, on your albums? Well, they're musical guests. They're singers and musicians, and his son is actually on here with him. And that's one thing I actually like about this album. He features musical guests. There's a little ad for Booker T album releases. I hope to get more of those as time goes on. I love Booker T and the MG's sound. So that's a highly recommended new album by Booker T. Sound the Alarm. Go out and pick it up. It's totally worth it if you love classic soul and new soul that's retro or whatever. Anyway, that's what I've got for Booker T and the MGs. All great albums, the whole bunch of them, except for those two kind of lousy cuts. Unless you like that grunge rock thing, you know, I wouldn't recommend the Neil Young songs on Potato Hole. They're not that great if you don't like that. But anyway, these are all fantastic albums. All the Booker T and the MGs ones are iconic. So I highly recommend all the stuff you see here. And happy birthday to Booker T. And I'm looking forward to hearing more music from you in the future. See you next time.